What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to a model airplane review. I'm your host, Ray. Today I'll be reviewing the NG model 1:200 scale Southwest Airlines Boeing 737 MAX-8 painted in the Imua 1 special livery. Item number 92001, released in May of 2024. In this video, I'll do an in-depth review of the model. At the end, I will give my opinion on the model, and I will decide whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. The box for this model is a two-piece box, consisting of a sleeve that slides over the main box. The box and its sleeve measure 22.2 centimeters long, 8.5 centimeters wide, and 22.3 centimeters tall. I will show you around the box now. This is the front. On the front of the sleeve, I notice some damage. I believe this damage is the result of the manufacturing process. On the bottom of the sleeve, this damage continues. The right side is just the box. The top is the sleeve, but there is no damage up here. This is the left side. It's also just the box. And here's the back side. This is also the sleeve, and it has some minor damage in the form of scratches. Once again, I believe this damage is the result of manufacturing. Thankfully, none of this damage transferred onto the box itself. Included in the box is the model, fully assembled, painted, and ready to display. Also included are parts for extended and retracted landing gear and a NG model collector rewards program card. In the box, there is a section designated for a metal display stand. However, my model did not include this metal display stand. For the majority of today's review, I will keep the model with the landing gear extended, but I will demonstrate what the retracted landing gear parts look like later, so stay tuned. Let's do a quick 360. The fuselage length for this model is 19.3 centimeters. The wingspan is 17.6 centimeters. The height is 6.2 centimeters. These dimensions are accurate to 1:200 scale. This model is made primarily out of die-cast metal with some plastic components. The wheels on the extended landing gear parts are made from rubber. Let's begin the review with the fuselage. The nose profile on this mold overall is excellent. There is one tiny nitpick that I would like to bring to your attention though. The top section of the radome here is not correctly done because there is a small bulge that protrudes from the normal profile of the 737 MAX nose. Now, this bulge is almost impossible to see unless you're really paying attention. So it's really not worth complaining about, but it's something I thought I would point out. Regardless, the nose profile of this mold is excellent. Let's move down the fuselage. Take a moment to observe the painted and printed detail on this model. This is a very hard livery to recreate, regardless of if this is a model manufacturer or someone doing this on their own. However, NG still screwed up here and there, even though they did an excellent job overall. I'll point out the issues I have with this right now. Here we can see some blue paint poking out from under the purple paint. This appears to be more of a paint defect. Now we also have printed detail issues here as well. There is an issue with one of the passenger windows right here. I'm not really sure what happened there. It looks like a stain. There's also some minor staining on this passenger window, and it appears to be off at an angle, which is not correct. I think there was one more thing over here. Yeah, no, I can't see it now. The other thing that I did find was pretty small, and I really can't complain about it. So those are small quality control issues. With regards to paint application, the color correctness, and the detail application, overall it looks excellent. As we move towards the rear of the aircraft, observe the different patterns of the livery. Overall, NG did a decent job, and what we found so far with regards to paint and detail application are quality control issues. Here is the vertical stabilizer. Overall, the vertical stabilizer is excellent. The only complaint I have about it is this stain in the leading edge silver paint. I'm not quite sure what that is, but it's on the leading edge silver paint of the vertical stabilizer. The vertical stabilizer is detailed with recessed panel line detail for the rudder. It's a little bit hard to see, but if you hold it in the light, you can see it. None of it is completely filled in with paint. With regards to paint, the colors are pretty good. The yellow is accurate, the red is accurate, and most importantly, the blue color is accurate. With recent releases, NG has gotten the blue color here incorrect, but on this model, they got it spot on. Let's look at the right side of the aircraft. On the left side of the aircraft, I pointed out a few quality control imperfections with the details on the fuselage. These are not present on the right side of the fuselage. Overall, the right side is really nicely done. Let's move on to the wings. The wings on this model are very nicely detailed. They feature details in the form of molded detail, painted detail, and printed detail. The molded detail I'm referring to is, of course, the wings themselves, but also recessed panel line details for the control surfaces, which you can see here. These are not filled in with paint, but they are a little bit shallow and they're hard to see at certain angles. Like right now, it is kind of hard to see some of the control surfaces on the outside of the wing. This is more so the case on the bottom of the wing, where some of these control surfaces are slightly filled in a bit more, not completely filled in though, so not really worth complaining about, but something I wanted to point out. The leading edge also has detail in the form of leading edge slats. These look pretty good, and these are painted a silver metallic color, which looks pretty nice. Paint application for that was pretty good as well. Printed detail only comes in on the top of the wing with overwing exit markings and wing markings. On both sides, this looks pretty good. With regards to assembly quality, the wing seam with the fuselage is almost non-existent. It's a very smooth and virtually seamless joint between the fuselage parts and the wing parts, which looks absolutely excellent. NG did an excellent job with that. The scimitar-tipped winglets look pretty good as well. If the camera would focus, there we go. The shape for the scimitar tips is clearly defined. The edges are sharp where they should be, and paint application with the silver paint on the leading edge looks pretty good as well. The angle at which they are set is also accurate. Here's what the inside of these scimitar winglets looks like as well. The horizontal stabilizers on this model are also quite nice. The seam with the fuselage is pretty good, and the horizontal stabilizers themselves are nicely done, in my opinion. I don't think there's anything really wrong with them. Here's what the bottom side looks like. While we're back here, there are a few things I would like to bring to your attention. One of the things I noticed was the APU access doors are extremely hard to see. I'm doing my best to hold the model still, but even then it might be hard to see the APU access doors. My pointer is lined up with one of the door ends. So I think NG could have done a better job with printing the detail, because the detail is there, it's just very hard to see. Now, with regards to the APU is pretty nice. It even has a very small exhaust hole, which no other 1:200 scale 737 MAX molds have, at least from what I know. However, I do see some yellow paint chipping through the metallic silver there, and also some of the yellow paint is chipping onto the black paint, or the black pattern of the livery here. This chipping of the black livery parts is not common, but it's one of the most common defects that I've been able to identify with this model. The engines on this model are very nice. The pylons are part of the wings, so we don't have to worry about any attachment issues between the wing and the pylon. The engines themselves are very nice as well. The exhaust nozzles are painted in different shades of metallic silver, which looks pretty good. The cowlings have, I believe it's the cowling, the cowlings have chevrons, which is accurate, and these chevrons are very sharp, so that's very good to see. Sorry, I kind of just dropped the nose gear. The fan blade detail on the engines is quite nice as well. The fans do not spin, and there is no printed detail on the spinner spirals. However, the detail of the fan assembly itself is very nice. On the bottom of the engine, we have a lot of printed detail. This printed detail is easy to recognize, and there is also an engine strake on the inside of the engines, which looks pretty nice. Here's the one on the left side. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but I do see that some of the darker silver paints kind of got cut off when it was transitioning to the lighter silver paints here on the inside of the engine. Small issue that I found. Moving on to aerial details, this model features gemmed lights, antennas, and a sat dome. We're at the top midsection of the aircraft, where we have a gemmed light right here, this looks pretty good, and a large antenna. This antenna, I believe, is too small, as are all of the antennas on this model, but they're not criminally small. I think that NG could do a better job with the sizing of the antennas, though. It is attached firmly to the model, and it is not attached with a bend or an angle. Here's the sat dome. The sat dome on this model is very nice. It's a plastic part and it fits very snugly with the fuselage, if that makes sense. There is little to no gap between the sat dome and the fuselage, so that's nice to see. The only issue I have with it is that it is off slightly to the right side of the aircraft, and it also appears to be at a slight angle. It isn't perfectly straight along the top of the fuselage, but it's not very hard to see, so I can let that slide a little bit. And back here we have another small antenna. We are now at the bottom front section of the fuselage where we have this antenna. It's the same as the large one I showed you up top, and this looks pretty good, just it's small. Move down the fuselage, there's the heart logo. I do see that some of the black printing did kind of poke out from underneath the heart logo there. It's a very small issue, so I won't hold it against NG. Here at the dead center of the fuselage, we have a gemmed light. This looks good. And lastly, for the aerial details, we have some smaller antennas right here. These are two different antennas, by the way, which I believe is accurate, and they look pretty good. Here is a view of the entirety of the bottom of the aircraft. There's a lot of detail down here as well, in both aircraft details and livery details, all of which looks pretty good. I did see a few small paint chips in the black livery details, as I pointed out earlier when we were discussing the APU, but nothing major. Moving on to the landing gear. As mentioned earlier, this model includes parts for extended and retracted landing gear. Right now the landing gear is in the extended configuration. The parts for both extended and retracted configurations are attached through a system of magnets, which you can see right here. Here is one of the parts for the main landing gear. Well, this is the main landing gear in the extended position. Overall, the quality on these isn't great. The parts themselves are very nicely detailed. The gear strut is nicely detailed, as is the cover right here, and it's even painted red to match the fuselage, as is the rim of the tire. Both of these details are accurate. The issue I have with this part is paint application. Here you can see that something got into the paint while it was drying. I'm not sure what this is, but it looks like a clump of dust or something, and that really isn't cool to see. Now also on the other side, you can see some of the darker gray metal poking out from underneath this light gray paint, which is also a testament to poor paint application. On the wheels themselves, I see a few stains of gray paint as well, and you can see the wheel isn't perfectly centered either. I can probably give it a little squeeze and it'll fix it, kind of, but still. But at least the wheels do roll, and as mentioned earlier, they are made out of rubber. So that was the one for the left side. This is the one for the right side of the aircraft. This one is a bit better off, but it also has similar issues to the one on the left side. Now for the nose gear. The nose gear is quite nicely detailed. Again, the wheels are made out of rubber and they roll. And the printing on the nose gear doors is very nice, and it's clearly defined, detailed. Overall, pretty good on the nose gear. Now here is what the empty gear base look like. I'm going to insert the retracted landing gear covers right now. So the retracted covers are made out of plastic, and the quality on these isn't as good either. You can see that some of the red paint got splotched onto the black paint here. This is not a big issue because this part isn't visible to, well, it's not visible outside of the aircraft when the part is in place, but it still is a testament to the bad paint application on the landing gear parts. So as you can see, I just have to slide the part right in and it fits right away. Where did the other one go? There we go. So overall, these parts fit in really good for the retracted main landing gears. The fit with the fuselage is pretty smooth, and with the wings, it's not perfect, but it's not terrible either. Now, I can't really speak on the nose gear part. Allow me to demonstrate why. So this is the way it goes. Well, let me try and figure out the way it goes. Here we go. So if I am to try and put it in, okay, so that wasn't supposed to work, but I suppose it is working. The magnet on my part was backwards, meaning that every time I tried to put it in, the magnets would oppose each other and this part would fly out. So that was a big issue. So apparently, this thing decided to cooperate right when I was trying to demonstrate that it wouldn't. And the fit with the fuselage looks pretty good. Now, if I can try and trigger what I was talking about earlier, that'd be excellent. There we go. All right, yeah, so the parts, they oppose. Or actually, the magnet doesn't even work anymore, jeez. That's probably why. It looks like the magnet fell out, so I'm gonna have a real trip finding that. But originally the part had the magnet attached backwards, so this part wouldn't fit into the aircraft correctly. Now, also included with this model is this thumbtack here, and this is to help you remove the retracted landing gear parts once they're in place. Now, this isn't really the best thing to use considering that the tip is made out of metal and it can scratch the paint, and as you can see, it's not very reliable, but it does eventually get the job done, one way or another. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to demonstrate this on camera. So here is our signature steering contest. Wing flex here looks good, gear balance seems to be mostly symmetrical. I do see that the wheel placement on the right side landing gear, the one that's on the left side of your screen, is a little bit off. I think I pointed that out earlier as well. Cockpit window printing looks symmetrical. Vertical stabilizer might be a little bit off to the left side of the aircraft. Not terrible though. Overall engine clearance looks pretty good as well, maybe slightly imbalanced from the looks of it. Overall, it looks pretty decent from up here. This concludes my review. It is now time for my opinion and recommendation. I think this is a pretty good model. It's not perfect. No die-cast airplane model is going to be perfect. It has quality control issues on the model itself and, surprisingly enough, on the box. The QC issues that we found were paint imperfections and maybe slight assembly quality issues with the landing gear. But overall, I think they're minor. Now, this is an incredibly detailed model. The livery, as mentioned earlier, I'd imagine was pretty hard to reproduce on this model here because it's a very complex livery with a lot of colors and a lot of patterns. And I think NG did a wonderful job replicating this livery on this model. With regards to the mold is amazing in my opinion. I think it's a very good replication of the Boeing 737 MAX-8. That being said, I definitely recommend this model to other collectors. However, be wary of quality control. You may get quality control issues. I have seen more severe quality control issues in the form of paint dents and texturing in the paint. Thankfully, my piece doesn't appear to have any of these issues. And of course, the landing gear might not be perfect, but it's still pretty good. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to check out my channel for other model airplane reviews if you want to go ahead and do that. And that's all I have for today. Like, comment, and subscribe. Happy building, happy collecting. Stay tuned for more model airplane content, and I'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves.